This is Rebecca Jernigan, your tour guide into discoveries, coming to you live from the heart of America via the World Wide Web, satellite, and podcast. Let's journey together into the realms of the known to the unknown in search of enlightenment, knowledge, and truth. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet Earth. This is your host, Rebecca Jernigan, and you are listening to Journeys with Rebecca right here on wolfspiritradio.com and also being broadcast at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio B. Please do remember that both stations, Wolf Spirit Radio and Freedom Slips, are totally listener supported. So any donations really do make a difference. It allows for all the show hosts and their guests to continue to provide the best and latest information. And of course, it's not going to be mainstream. Don't forget to visit the website. That's journeyswithrebecca.com. Check out the archives, upcoming guests and their topics, classes, workshops, and any other offer that is, as well as setting an appointment for your sessions with me. Don't forget about the free newsletter for you to sign up. It's right there on the left side of the page, on any page you go to. Content is still being added, and the archives will soon be moved over to YouTube. So if you have not subscribed to that, you might want to do that. And again, you can get to that from the left side of the pages, any of the pages. I have a really, really interesting guest tonight. And it's a little different format than what I'm used to doing. So, as you all are listening to this, my guest, first of all, is only going to be on for the first hour. The second hour, we've got a little surprise coming for you, and we'll tell you about that a little bit later. But tonight's guest, her name is Klaire D Roy. And also sitting in with Klaire is her editor, Josie, who's also going to be a part of this interview. The book, Klaire is the author of the book, The Circle of Initiates, Past and Present. It's and let me tell you a little bit about it. It's a brief generic biography, a critical study of the structure of the 7 rays and their initiation level by a Tibetan master. And I'm never very good at these, so I'm going to try this. Dwal Kul, I believe.
Perfect.
Thank you. It's provocative and visionary. It's an extensive volume from a spiritual standpoint. It's the lives of 109 influential personalities. And as the title suggests, it's past and present personalities. It candidly unveils what drives and motivates them through the use of spiritual tools of the rays of energy and spiritual initiation levels. What forces backed and sustained such as Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, or Barack Obama? What is the nature of the energy that compels Madonna, George Lucas, Walt Disney, and Beethoven? What is the source that fueled the genius such as Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, or Nikola Tesla? Or the magnetism of Trunga? That's totally wrong. Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra. Which of these personalities accomplished their soul's plan? Which of them made mistakes that impacted their destiny? A ray is a type of energy that qualifies the 6 bodies that compose each human being: monad and spirit, soul, personality, mental, astral, and physical, and all that exists on this planet. The study of the 7 rays of energy and how they influence us can help us greatly understand ourselves and those with whom we live. Spiritual initiation levels measures the degree of evolution or the maturity level attained by our soul. From one life to another, our soul strives to attain a higher spiritual maturity through experiences, some positive, some others seemingly negative. An awareness of our initiation level can be a great benefit in understanding all the variousness of life. This is just a fantastic show tonight. I want to take this time right now and welcome my guests to the show, Klaire and Josie. Welcome, ladies.
Hi. Hello.
Now, I didn't mention I didn't mention that both of these ladies have a lot of French. They're very French. So there's going to be a little Josie's here to kind of help Klaire with any clarification and maybe helping to answer some of the questions in case, as Americans can be a little, over the top with conversations. So we want to make sure that we have it all very well followed through with in regards to the questions that are being asked and the answers. And so this is really a fun show. I'm really looking forward to it. I guess what I would like to start out with is, we talked about the 7 rays. You talked about the 7 rays in the little opening that I did for you. Is this a good place to start with a kind of a little bit of an overview before we get into some of the other different topics that this book encompasses?
Do you want me to talk about the rays? This is your
yes, a little bit.
Introduction? Oh, yes. It's okay. The rays are a kind of energy that will distribute on Earth. And the first time that we have to talk about it. It's the Tibetan master Joel Kuhn with the book that he writes with Alice Bailey in last century, and he explained very carefully, the rays and their influence on Earth, and why it is important for us to understand what is this energy, because with this kind of energy we can understand a part of what is the universe, and it's a part of God. For me, the 7 rays is different kind of expression of the divine in us. And with the soul, we have the chance to experiment this kind of energy, this beautiful. I know that with each ray, there are negative way and positive way to experiment it. And when we are young in our soul, generally we experiment the negative way, because we have to experiment the both, because God wants us to experiment it, and He wants that we are complete with the yin and the yang. I don't know how to explain it, but for me, it's beautiful to be able to work and to understand what is this kind of energy in our life. And we are able, with the comprehension of these rays, to understand more ourselves, but to understand more others, and sometimes to how can I say it, be able to be more comprehensive and de-dramatize the situation. Because, for example, if someone fall in love, someone with a Ritu, who are a very sensitive ray, very soft ray, like to be touched, like to talk, fall in love with someone who are influenced with a ray 1. The ray 1 is a very strong, don't like to be touched, don't like to speak too much, and sometimes it's hard to understand each other. But if you understand the influence of the ray, you understand what is for me, just the word I have is the lila, the play of the rays. You can understand what we can learn from each other, and we are able to understand more each other. I talk too much.
Oh no, beautiful. That was actually beautifully said. So, the rays are really about learning about from a deeper level, not just a surface level. We're getting into, the whole soul and the spirituality, behind the relationships, behind yourself. It's a beautiful thing. So when you talked about Master Dwal Kul, did you actually train under him? Did you, was he like a mentor or teacher for you, Master DK?
He is one of my master. So, it's a great privilege for me to work with him. But, I met him in my state meditation long time ago. So, 30 years ago. And, at that time, I did not know that, it was him. I just met him in my meditation state, and this man just began to talk to me and told me that I had to change some way that I meditate, and he gave me some personal advice about my life. And I began to follow what he's told to me. And I began to saw him in my meditation regularly. So maybe once a month, but I never asked him who he was, because I was too shy to ask him. I just feel that it was a great master, and I was very grateful that he gave me his personal advice about myself. But one day he asked me to work with him, and so I refused, because I thought that I was not able to do the work he wanted me to do. I was not Alice Bailey, but when I began to see him in my meditation during 1 year, I did not know it was him. But in the same time, I met my physical master, Simananda. And one day, finally, I decided to talk about him, of this man that I saw in my meditation. And he told me that maybe it was Dwal Kul, because I described the way he talked to me and what he's talking to me. It's okay about. And finally, I knew that it was Dwal Kul. And I was very impressed. And he asked me twice to work with him, and I refused because I thought I was not able to do the job for him. He just asked me to transcribe some information. But finally, the third time, he asked me again, and finally I say, okay, we will try once. And if I do a good job, maybe we can work together. But I don't understand why he asked me. And he just told me that I was one of his disciples in past life. And he told me that I have the strength, that for him, and I have the right ray in my mental. He is a ray 1, so it's a ray that give very high concentration, and so I did with him first work, and when I show it to my editor Jose, she told me that, hey, what is about, it's like a person, an English person who tried to write in French, because I write in French, I'm a French woman. And so we realized that it was really DK, because it's not the way I write. And he did mistakes that an English person will do if this person try to write in French. So, and we began to work together, DK and me, And for me, the Circle of Initiates is not my book. It's just the book that DK want me to transcript for him. And for me, it's a great privilege to do this for him.
Well, I have to tell you.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah, I have to say this book is extremely comprehensive in each person that you went through. 109 of them, I think, is what is in there, if I'm not mistaken. How long did this take you to compile all of this information of all of these very well-known people, past and present, Klaire?
A few years. So
2 years?
No, few. Because the first one, I thought I write it in 10 years ago. 10 years ago. More than, yes, and I was not, I'm not able to write a lot of this scripture because I do some scripture too for decay.
Mm-hmm.
Just only this kind because it's helpful for people, but the decay transmit me some other information that I have to write for him, and it's taken me a lot of time, and I have to gain my life. So I'm a therapist too. So I'm not able to write a lot by weeks. Maybe 1 or 2 initiate now. When I have time per week. But the book that you have in your hands take maybe 5 years to write. And you know that it's long for DK because I'm a very skeptical woman, and sometimes I agree with him what he is told about some initiate. I want to understand why he told something, or sometimes I don't agree with him, and he has to explain to me why, and he is very patient with me, and I'm very grateful about that.
Well, I have to say, again, an extremely comprehensive compilation of all of these people that most everyone will recognize their names, and we'll get into a couple of those here in a minute. But I think maybe what I would like to do is to ask you the next question, which would be for you to maybe elaborate, number one, what is meant by an initiation level, and the second part of that is what is an initiate as it relates to the 7 rays.
Okay, so the initiation in this book, we don't focus very on the initiation. It will be in the second book because DK wants people to understand more what is the rays. But I can explain briefly what is the initiation. So we have many initiation on this earth, and it's the soul that is initiate, not the personality. We have to understand that because the personality often thinks she is more evolved than she is in reality, because it's the soul that experiments on earth, and it's the soul that will how can I say it, will integrate the lesson that we have to integrate on this earth to be more divine. And the first initiation is the master of the desire of the physical body, but the materiality. So we have to master the desire about money, about food, about what we need to live. And when we are able to master it, after we have to master our emotion. And it is the second initiation. And it's very hard because we are very implicated with our emotion. And I think every minute of our life is implicated with emotion. So for me, it's one of the hardest initiation that we have to go through. Thank you, Jose. And after that, we have to go to the third initiation, which is the master of our thoughts. And it's hard, but when we are to go through our third initiation, we have a lot of experimentation behind us, and we begin to understand what is the meaning of life and what we have to understand and master in this life. And with the third initiation, we are able to master our thought and not to be so impressed by negative thoughts. But we try to always work with positive thoughts. So, thinking. Thank you, Jose. And after that, we go through our fourth initiation, and there it is not the extinction of the ego, but the master of the ego. And now we are able to master in a better way our life. We are not so influenced by the how can I say it? We are much more able to be ourselves, who we are truly, soul in incarnation, and we are not so disturbed by what is materiality, emotionality, and thoughts. And now, with when we do our fourth initiation, I think it's like when we become a Buddha. So it's wake up. I don't know how to translate it. We are éveillés, so we are able to understand more others, and we can now work very truly or authentically for the hierarchy and the divine. Oh, so sorry. My English is so bad. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're doing wonderful. You're doing wonderful. You're doing wonderful. You really are. Yes. You're doing well. I'm going to tell you, I could not. And listen, I took French in school, and I can't do French at all. Huh? And so you're doing really well to speak English as well as you do. So my hat's off to you, Klaire, for sure. Really, you're doing wonderful. I can understand you. So I have a couple of questions here. I know that by you studying all of this, Klaire, and by you doing all this, in some way it must have really, you must be looking at life way differently now and people way differently now than you did before you actually started studying this and getting into this whole kind of system, if you will. Is that a fair statement to say?
Yes, it's true. And now I'm very more cool. I don't know how to say it because before I was very judgmental. Yeah, judgmental.
Yes.
And now when But when I began to be a therapist, I realized rapidly that I cannot treat for the same symptom a person with the same way. And now that I understand the race, I can more understand the complexity of the life and how it is difficult for everyone to be on earth and to do our best with all the constraint we have in our life. Any kind of constraint. And when I saw a patient or a patient in front of me or with my friend, I can more understand what they are maybe live because I'm not in their shoes. But it gave me I'm not less of stress, but some tools to understand more and not judgmental. And for me, it's a very precious tool because now I can understand more my children, my husband, and myself. Because when I began to stay with my husband, I just want to give you an example. So
Sure.
I have a retreat in my physical body. So I talk fast. I think fast. I move fast. I do all the things fast. And for me, when I put something in the fridge, the important is it's to be in the fridge. But my husband have a 7 rate. For him, the important is the order. Yeah? So when you put the milk in the fridge, you have to put the milk always in the same place. And so when I began to stay with him, I was so frustrated, but I'm so, I doubt on myself. And I depreciate myself because I don't understand why I cannot be like him. Now I understand that I am me and he is him, and I can find a way that we are able to live together, not to argue together, and share the things. It's important, you know?
It is. Got to learn how to share the fridge. I love it.
Yeah. So it can be a conflict between a couple if you don't understand and you don't. Sorry.
Oh, that's cute. That is just adorable. I love that story. I'm going to have to remember that one, Claire.
Okay.
It's delightful.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, it makes a lot of sense though. Seriously, when we stop and think about it, when we really put things into perspective like that, we have to go, oh, okay. And, when we work through it, then you get to the point where you're at, and this is a beautiful thing. It seems like it has really, just kind of touched you in many, many ways. Want to go on just kind of segue into, after 109 personalities that you had to study and, learn about, and, I'm assuming some of that was kind of directed, by Master DK of what he wanted you or who he wanted you maybe to look at. Maybe it was just your own, intuition. But out of all of these, can you tell me about your most interesting ones for you to learn about? Let's say one or two of them, that was some of the most interesting for you to get into their whole ray structure, and then tell us a little bit about them if you can. Any of them stick out for you, Claire?
Okay. For me, one of the initiate in the books that was not surprised me, but I was happy to know the initiation level and the race. It was Madame Blavatsky because yes, And I know that a lot of people doesn't like her because she's for a lot of people she's in the dark side of the spirituality, I think. And when I read his life few years ago, I understand more. I understand more maybe who maybe she is what qui elle était, who she was. But for me, it's when DK told me that she was 4.5 initiate. Now I understand more why she was not understood by the majority of the people, because we cannot understand I initiate like her, because she worked with a kind of energy that we are the majority of the people on the planet we don't understand. We will not able to understand. And I realized that a lot of people again today don't understand the work that she did for decay, and the work she tried to the teachings she tried to transmit to the humanity. And for me, when we study her race, we realized that she had a rewind in her soul, and the rewind is the strange, is very hard ray, but it's necessary when you have to break some form, thought form, and it's the ray that can change a lot of things, but often it's so hard. They don't have the comment on dit ça, the tact, they don't have
The right way.
the right way to do the thing without blesser quelqu'un, hurting people. All they want is to do the work, and often they don't care what it's collateral damage. Merci, José. So she had a rewind in her soul, and she had a risk 6, and the risk 6 can in his astral body. So the risk 6 is very hard too when he wants to do a job for a goal that he think it's the good one. And she works for the master American, and she will do anything to do the job that he asks her. And the resist can be very hard, like Rewan. So for people who saw her work and the kind of teaching she is giving, it's not easy to understand for us to see her in this way. But do you want another initiate, or do you want I continue with Madame Blavatsky?
Oh, you can go with another initiate. That's fine. Who was another one that was intriguing to you besides Madame Blavatsky?
The one that I was very, very surprised is Bill Gates. And for me, Bill Gates was, sorry?
Oh, yeah, I was like, oh, really? I was very surprised when you said that.
Because for me, Bill Gates was I thought it was a young soul, and he was there he was on earth to experiment the physical plan and to do money. But when we realized that he was a third initiate, and after that, because I doubt, and after that, DK told me that he was a third initiate, and he told me his race. I do research, and I realized that he is a kind of philanthropist, and he gave a lot of money for help women and young children. So I was very surprised about that. And I have to admit that I argue with DK about this, but he explained to me that Bill Gates want to help people, and he was just a tool to permit people to progress. Yes, with comment on ça aujourd'hui, electronic things can help, but he want to help people to live in a better planet, and he works to help the consciousness to be of the people to be more aware of what about life and what can disturb a good meaning or good living in life. So, and if I look at his race, he has many re-7 and many re-3 in his configuration. So the re-7 he will with this influence want the perfection in all what he do, and sometimes it can be very for the person who are around him to be very difficult to understand, because when we have a 7, we have a race 7 in our configuration, like my husband. You want the perfection, and you will be disturbed or when people cannot understand you, because the race 7 has a goal. He want to reach this goal, and he won't do anything for that. Not in the same way of the Ray 1, but he want the perfection. The Ray 1 not necessarily want the perfection. He just want to reach the goal. But the Ray 7 want to reach the goal, but in a certain way. And he will guide people to the way he think it's the good way to reach this goal. It's okay? You understand? And he has many retreats, so he is probably, I don't know him personally, but probably is always thinking about things he want to do, probably think fast, talk fast maybe, I don't know, but he want, it's, the retreat is the intelligence, active intelligence, so he is always in movement, always want the thing change in a certain way. So he want the planet progress in the better way. But sometimes we don't know when we look at him if it is always the good way. But he is a third initiate, so I think we have to be confident in him. But he can do mistakes. But I think Bill Gates tried to do good thing for the planet, and I have to admit maybe it's okay. I don't know. Sorry.
Well, it's one of those things, right? And I think he probably had, if when people read the book, and I hope they do go get this book, and before we let you go today, we're certainly going to find out where they can get it. If nothing else, this is a wonderful journey into our past, influential people around the world. And really, honestly, once you get into it, you realize what kind of a mark they've made, an impression they've made on the world, and how it's imprinted, with their personalities, what they've done, who they are, and how some of that has carried on, how some of it has changed. It's really very fascinating when you get into a really, really bigger picture of that. I'd like to throw a name out here and see if this is, if this one will work for you to tell us about, and that would be Jane Roberts.
Jane Roberts?
Jane Roberts,
She it's about Set. Okay. Jane Roberts, yes. She's a medium, huh? Jane Roberts?
Yes.
Okay. So I read some of her books about Seth. It's a very
Yes.
interesting. And for me, when DK gave his initiation, she's a 2.2. So she has mastering a lot of his emotional body. So it's important for a medium to be able to master it, because if you don't master your astral body, the transmission will be colored by your your emotion. And when a master wants to transmit uh, through a medium, the medium has to put aside his her emotion to be able to transmit what the master wants to transmit really. And Jane Roberts has mastered a lot of part of her emotional body, and she has two rituals one in her monad and the other in her soul. So she's a very sensitive person. She wants to receive a lot of information because she's like a channel, open channel, to be able to receive it. And she has, another ritual in Sobri in his physical, and a retreat in his physical body. So the retreat make her able to capture the energy and to transmit it to his mental body, because when we receive an information when we are a medium, we receive it with our etherical body, and it is in our physical body. And our brain, our physical brain, has to be able to transmit the information with a kind of energy. It's very complicated, but she has as mental body one in her mental body. The other one is very concentrate. Okay, so his brain, or retreat in his brain, can transmit to the one is in her mental body the energy that Seth wants to transmit to her. And it's important that she has a one, because I just want to explain the retreat will capture the energy and will change a little bit, because Seth has a lot high energy, and if it is not transmit correctly, the energy can burn some cells in our physical body. So the retreat is able to adapt, to transform, to make the physical body capture the information and to transmit it to the mental body. And with the rewind will concentrate what the retreat will transfer, and it will be safe for the receiver. It's complicated. Do you understand a little bit?
I do. Oh no, I do understand and I do understand the whole premise behind the connection and the whole uniqueness of that situation. That's a very unique situation,
Yes.
for her, and for Seth, I would assume as well. Although I haven't, actually spoken with him. It's interesting. She was an interesting person. I read a lot of that material. I read a lot about her many years ago. And so she was always a fascination for me as far as information and how she garnered it and, how she gathered it and the information that came through her. So it was really, really fabulous.
Yes.
We're getting close to about 10 minutes or so before we wrap up. So let me take this time and ask you, and I know, Josie, you said you wanted to bring something up, and I don't want to let you forget that. Let you, though, either one of you, kind of take the ball and run with it. I've been, posting questions to you all night. So I know there were some things that you wanted to talk about. So, whatever it is that you would like, let's go ahead and open that up for right now.
Okay. Well, I would just like to tell all of you that this book, even if it seems a little bit hard to understand, won 2 beautiful prizes in the States. One of those prizes was given by the COVR Visionary Award, and they gave the first prize to this book. And what is interesting is that a lot of editors send books for giving prizes and all that. And this book was chosen the first book. It won the Golden Award for the Spiritual Book of the Year. So this is really interesting for us. Yes, yes. The other one is by, and I have a really hard time to say that word in English, Pinnacle Book Achievement Award. Is Pinnacle okay? Do you understand what I mean?
I believe
Pinnacle.
I do, yes. Pinnacle.
Yeah, it's like the summit. Yeah, yeah. And the same thing. It won a first prize. So there's it's really interesting to see that people are interested by this kind of book, even if it's new, even if it's a book that is completely different from what you usually read.
Well, I have to say it is very different than a usual read for sure. It's fascinating, to read about all of these different people again and to go through everything. And of course, Master DK comes in. There's portions of this in every one of them, where they're at now. You go on to even describe how, whether or not they've reincarnated, where they might be in this world if they have, or if they haven't reincarnated, why, or when. You've given an awful lot of information in there, as a follow-up, as a precursor, as well as the kind of the nuts and bolts of them, as well as where are they at now and how are they going to influence. So, it's fascinating. It was really fascinating to me, to go through this book. I have to tell you now, when I first got this book in the mail, I was intimidated by its size. And then I really was. This is a very large book, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to take me 2 months just to read it, right? And once you get started in it, it really just becomes this like page turner, because you're reading about the individuals and, what their journey has been and what their inside personality that we would not have known as, Teddy Roosevelt or Abraham Lincoln. That was before our incarnation, right? And so we get to learn about how these people have influenced us, as well as the people that are on this planet today. It gives you a better understanding. It was fabulous. It was fabulous.
Yeah. There's one thing that I want to tell you also is that, and this is very important for me as an editor, when Klaire received this information from DK, it was clear for me that we couldn't change anything. So what you read is really what you received. And for an editor, it's really something that is, usually you go and you editate, but what you have in hand is what you really received.
See, now that had to have been a treat for you as well, Josie, to have been a participant in this and being right into the whole crux of all of this. How wonderful for you and, and Klaire, my goodness, your dedication to this work is, you can see it in this book. You can absolutely see the dedication that you have with all this information and the introduction as well as the in-depth information on each of these individuals. 109 personalities. Wow. It's just crazy. Great, though. It's great.
What is amazing also is that all the different kinds of initiates that you have in this book. You can go through Michael Jackson, the Pope, and it's all, for me, it's like the whole world. It's just not like one section of people that DK talks to us about. It's the whole universe. So this is also really interesting. Mm-hmm.
And exactly. I mean, this is a really very fascinating read. Very, very fascinating. And it's one of those books that you will go back to and read again and again, different excerpts of it, of the different people. Somebody may bring up somebody and you go, oh, I got to go back and read that about, Beethoven or by the Pope or whatever. And, you just never know. This is going to be one of those books that'll stay on people's shelves for many years and they'll refer to it. Just nicely done. I have to say it's been very nicely done. And it's been really just a joy to have both of you on here tonight. Now, I know that the book is on Amazon. Is it somewhere else where people can purchase it?
Yeah, you can go to any bookstores and ask for it. Baker and Taylor is the one that is distributing us through the States. So if they don't, they can ask for it and they won't have any problem to get it.
Very good. Very good. And, I'm not sure do you have a website, Klaire? Is there a website that people can go to?
Yeah, you can go to www.palm, publications, all together, palmpublications.com. You can also order the book through the site.
Okay, very good. Well, I tell you, this has just been really, really fascinating. We only have like another minute or two maybe. Is there anything else that you would like to leave our audience with tonight before we have to let you go? I'm just sad to see you go.
So thank you for your patience. And, you know that at the end of the book, we explain, very, clearly the difference, of the race and how we can find it in our, different body. And, so the book is divided in two sections. One is the initiate and the other it's for help people to understand more what is, the race and to help them to find their race. So thank you. You are very kind,
You
charmant. You're
very,
Thank you.
This delay in this Skype is kind of tough too on top of all of that, there's probably a 2 or 3 second delay in between what I say and what you actually hear and vice versa. So I thank you for your patience tonight. This is just, honestly, it's been just a real joy, to have you on and for you to reintroduce this wonderful topic on the 7 rays and all these initiates. I think this is going to certainly spurn people into reading more about it themselves, and hopefully they'll go out and buy the book, The Circle of the Initiates, Past and Present. You've been delightful, and thank you so much for your kind words. Truly, both of you, Jose and Klaire, you've been just delightful, and I wish you nothing but the best, and congratulations on all the beautiful awards that you've also gotten in regards to this book. And I look forward to hearing more from you in the future. I'm sure that that's absolutely going to happen. So I wish you well in everything that you are going to be doing here and in the now and in the future.
Merci. 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 Bonsoir de Montréal. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, you guys. We're going to let you go now, and then we will be back here in Journeys with Rebecca in just a few minutes, but we're going to go ahead and let our guests go tonight. And thank you for being here. And for the rest of you, we are going to be continuing the show, obviously. JP will be here with us. We are going to be having a conversation about the 7 rays, so please stay with us and stay tuned for it right after this break. Don't go away. Welcome back, everybody, and you are listening to Journeys with Rebecca right here on wolfspiritradio.com and also Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio B. We had a really fantastic guest on the first hour, Klaire D Roy, the Circle of Initiates, past and present, talking about the 7 rays and her 109 different initiates that she went through. We're going to carry on that conversation, but before I forget, I want to mention who some of my upcoming guests are. I forget to do that on a weekly basis when I'm here. So I wanted to tell you about next week's guest a little bit. Her name is Lisa Barnett, from Questioning to Knowing, 73 Prayers to Transform Your Life. She is an author, an Akashic expert. She is a teacher. She's also the Akashic Knowing School of Wisdom founder. So she's going to be on next week. And then we have, the 19th, I have 2 people lined up. I'm not sure which one's going to show up first, so we'll talk about that. But another guest that I'll be having on the 26th this month is, Solaris Blue Raven. She actually had me on her shows, 2 different shows. If you would like to go and listen to those, you can get a feel for who this woman is. I posted those on my journeyswithrebecca.com website under the, broadcast. There's 2 of them there. She's a fantastic woman. She is a published author as well. She's a timeline astrologer. She's a remote viewer, a clairvoyant, and she also is an assessment specialist in psychotronic warfare and synthetic telepathy and covert technology. We're going to be getting into a lot of AI with her and some of the other information. And I've got a couple other really cool people that I've got coming on. I just haven't got their dates firmed up yet. So it's going to be a really good month this month for shows. So please, I hope you tune in on Monday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time, right here where you're listening right now. Okay, Mr. JP, welcome.
Good evening, how are you?
Like you haven't been here all night, but
yeah, I've been here in the background thinking, rays, yes.
Something you know nothing about, my friend, right?
Isn't it, it's that, you asked me on the radio, when was it? 2010? 2011?
Yeah.
That's sort of a long time ago. And you said, what can we talk about? And I said, I don't know anything. I have no idea what I talk about. Oh, I can talk about the rays. Let's talk about the rays. And your chat room went crazy. And,
yes.
So, but, I thought it was about the rays, and that's apparently about my voice. But anyway, it's like, you know how, when you get this intelligent woman who wants to put it, and they say, God, you're so beautiful, and you want to be appreciated for being intelligent, but not being, anyway, long story. So here I am, and I've been reading people's rays and been doing that, my way. So like when somebody else comes along, so let's talk about this, Bill Gates. What, can you pull a few names out, and we'll have a look at them.
Okay, hang on. Let me get my other glasses.
Actually, I do a Ray reading. If does she ever give does he say Bill Gates 375 or something like that?
Well, let me see here. I'm almost there. I'm almost there.
That should be fascinating, because
Bill Gates is not one of my favoriteest people.
No, exactly.
But he was born William Henry Gates III. That should tell you something right there. Right? But the initiation level she gives is 3.1. And this is what that reads like. Thanks to his initiation level, he is recognized as a powerful man who demonstrates more detachment towards the world of matter while still being a part of it. Interesting observation there. She gives the ray structure as a monad of 2, a personality of 3 to 7, a mental 7 to 5, astral 6 to 2, a physical 3 to 7, and a soul is 3 to 5. He's changed his soul ray in this life, she says. Does that help?
So, hang on. So she's got it in a different order. So monad 2, soul 5.
She says his soul ray of 3 and a sub ray of 5.
Soul wave 3, okay. And a sub ray of 5. And personality ray?
His ray is 3 and his sub ray is 7.
3 with a 7 sub ray. Okay. So does he have any first ray? Does she attribute any first ray there?
No first rays in any of his stuff here.
That's interesting because, you know,
and no force.
Cause he's he's like a force majeure, you know, like, the psychologist told his mother, don't let anybody get in his way.
Yeah, in the very end, she ends up with all of them, and she gives like a synopsis. He's a reliable person, generous, but stubborn and arrogant. That sounds like him.
Yeah.
He's not easily impressed. His weakness is love, or if you prefer, his heart, which only ask him to open it in order to become an active instrument for hierarchy. So, you know, he is arrogant and he is stubborn, obviously. I mean, that does describe Bill Gates.
So interesting about you see the movement of soul rays. The movement of rays is due to evolution and the initiations that she's speaking about. And the way that she's describing, like he's 3.5, you know, we're moving through these. There are sub-stages in the same way that there are octaves. You know, you're moving up an octave, but you can go up the notes, or you can go from one to the. So you can take smaller steps, if you see what I mean. And evolution is a step at a time.
Right.
So, interesting. So, yeah, I would have given him more of a 3.75 around this kind of time because of the negative influence from, the powers that be, you know, that put you in the billionaires club and then they start, you know, wasn't it Bill Gates who was, part of the cracking things with the Promise software? And anyway, we won't get into the dark side of things too much, but yeah, you know, having a third ray in those higher dimensions, is often the sign of not such a good intent. I would have said, you know, his second ray, monad would have, maybe moved to a third ray monad. I'd say in certain times. Maybe that's what I would say. But anyway, so got any more? Give us another one. I mean, it's my opinion. This is
well, you know, opinion, and everybody's going to have a different way of looking at this. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's no hard, fast science to any of this, right? The one that I really wanted to look at, and we ran out of time, was Tesla, if I can find him.
Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, and she was really attracted to Blavatsky too. See if I can find Tesla in here. Tesla.
Oh yes, Madame Blavatsky.
Yes. She's Tesla and Nikola. Okay. Here we go. Monad 3, Soul 2, Personality 7, Subray of 5, Mental 5, Subray of 3, Astral 3, Subray of 6, and a Physical 1, Subray of 7.
Astral 3 with a 6 subray. That's somebody who's like got telekinesis. That's very interesting. You know these kids that make bottles fly off the shelf?
I used to do that. Seriously, I used to be able to move stuff when I was a kid. And I got so freaked out that I was able to do that I quit doing it. So now I haven't been able to do it since I was a kid.
That's third ray in the astrals. Usually, when, during puberty. That sort of thing.
I don't think so. I was like 8.
All right. Oh, wow. Yeah, well, there you go. So that's, those are things. So third ray in the astral body there. That's interesting.
Yep.
Yep. I lost count. So, six ray in the astral body is kind of normal, like everybody. Everybody's got a bit of this, unable to contain this ever expanding pressure cooker of the world. Now where was he? Did you say, Ray 3 monad?
Yes.
And Ray 5 soul? No.
Soul was 2.
Soul 2, right, okay. Right, okay. And what was it? The personality, the personality ray.
7 with a sub ray of 5.
Right, okay. So, alright, so 3 to 7, brackets 5, right? That would give, that certainly could, you'd have extraterrestrial influence at that point, but it may be good and it may be bad. So he may be getting through. Depends on, alright, so it depends on your level of initiation, how you can steer that. And whether you've been caught into the dark side or not. Because having a third ray monad, but in those days I think we're all from that club. We're like all leaving the Dark Lodge, having been entrenched accidentally for all these billions of years, and we're all moving out of it. So, no one can judge. But, so there's Tesla, and he's got a second ray soul, which is the initiate soul. You could look upon that as, in another way of saying it, the body of Christ, which is it's a spiritual entity. So its spiritual entities as physical, it goes down as physical as the astral plane, which is, or the plane of the soul, where, it manifests into the astral plane. It's like it impresses the astral plane. In the same way that when your heart shines out, it shines down into your solar plexus.
Interesting.
So
let me read this last little bit on here on this, because this explains some of the things that you just said. He reincarnated 3 times. Among others, he was a powerful woman in the Arabic world, which was rare at the time. He would have known Rumi. He granted himself a life of rest and then came back as the founder of the Budapest School of Sciences. And now this is according to DK. We have to admit that he does not like to incarnate, finding that life on Earth is too limited. He knows, however, that he has to earn his stripes, quote unquote, and act in such a way as to evolve on the planetary scale in order to reach his 6th initiation, which would free him from this planet. Subsequently, he will work elsewhere because we consider him a cosmic bodhisattva who helps souls everywhere in the universe, integrating into their world and living their suffering and limitations. So he's quite well known, I guess, in the field of celestial beings.
He's a dude in the galaxy.
He is. He's a dude of the galaxy.
Known. He abides.
He's known, yes. So we have a question from Vanessa. She would like for you to explain the part about initiates again. So that might help make the conversation a little easier for people to understand as we're going through it.
Right. Okay. So the process of evolution, where we evolve from being humans into something next, human 2.0. Organic human 2.0, not the transhuman 2.0. Or let's say organic human 2, and as opposed to transhumanic 2.0. because that implies that there would be more improvements and upgrades, which involve cutting bits off and replacing them with machines. So let's stick with the organic, because that's close to my heart. I like the organic evolution, which is instead basically it's being harmless, having being good to people, not impinging on other people's free will, which is that's what being harmless is. Allowing things that need to grow, not interfering, things like that. And that kind of makes you wise, and then people start asking you questions, and you have to get even more harmless because you want to slap them. Okay, so that's the process of initiation. You get a bit smart, and then you discover that there are other people who want to be as smart as you. They're your students, and then you're limited by their lack of enlightenment. So you have to then explain to them how to enlighten themselves so that you can then move on to the next stage. And that's the way it goes all the way up. And that's what initiation is. You kind of, in order to, you think it's a good thing, you think, I'm going to get more enlightened. But as soon as you get more enlightened, people come after you and say, how did you do that? And so you say, well, I just went within. Well, how'd you go within? Where'd you go to? Well, how'd you sit? Well, what do I do? What do I say? You have to explain to them. It's not about that. And in that explaining, that's where you get all the sacred texts, which is essentially shut up and be nice.
Yeah, for sure.
So initiation basically means, that you become responsible for the relationships of certain, portions of humanity, even though you didn't want to be, but that's the way. You've read Richard Bach, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the point of, that's the point of initiation is that we all go together. So, we will attract to us, people who recognize in us that something that sees a better way, and somehow life flows a little more for those people. And so people become interested. How come it is that you're like that? And, well, it's because I have a different way of looking at things. Look, there's Audrey.
So if our job is to kind of evolve ourselves as well as helping other people evolve, how many times do you have to do that?
Lots.
Okay.
I'm afraid. And this is the initiatory process, and they map it out, and the Tibetans have got it, kind of got it down, and that's what Dwalkul's talking about specifics about the process. And, but the thing is, unless you've been through a bit of the process, you have no idea what this book is talking about. Okay. No, that's right. We understand about the chakras, right? And we understand about there are 7 of them, and we've got 7 rays, and there's, right? So does that mean that there's 1 ray for each chakra? Yes. However, there are 2 kind of, arrangements of these rays in the chakras, and one of them is what you'd call, the unawakened human, and the other is the initiated human. Is that a better way of putting it?
That's a really good way of putting it.
Okay. So it's like a dormant, but possible, potential. Okay.
Right.
And usually it takes one, bike crash or, few lifetimes of accidentally dying. Actually, every lifetime ends, right?
Every physical body, right?
Yeah, that's right. Every lifetime has to end somehow. It's never usually good. So anyway, and the idea is to raise your consciousness so when you die, and the Tibetans, I said, have got it really mapped out. The best place to die from is your head. So if you die from a head injury, they say that's really good because you're dying out of that top chakra there. You see? And
I see.
You get the idea. So the further up you go, in your evolution, that's where you leave and that's where you start off again. And you gradually raise yourself up, through the colors. It's like the colors of a star, and which is like the colors of, metal if you heat it. It goes red, orange hot, then red hot, then white hot, then blue hot. Stuff.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yes, 7 days in a week. Now, many years ago, back to our conversation, Rebecca, 7 days in a week. You asked me one day, or your guide said to me, can you remember this? He said, what color is today? What color is tomorrow? When you wake up, make a note, ask yourself that question, what color is today? And I did that. And I found I can only say this is me personally. I don't know if it works for anybody, but I think everybody should try. Maybe we should have a little kind of, exercise is that everybody, if they can, remember, right, when you wake up in the morning, write down what color today is. Right? It was a very interesting thing because there was a sequence and it wasn't the sequence that I expected.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, you never did follow up with me on that. That's interesting for them.
So shall we speak about that another week? And let everybody maybe send us use the ask question. In Wolf Spirit Radio, we've got an ask question, and instead of under the subject, say colors of the day, and see what people do after sort of a week to 10 days to see if there's any pattern repeating, or a couple of weeks.
That'd be good. That'd be good. We can set it up for a review of those. I'd be happy to do something with you, like say on the 19th. Even if I have a guest, I'll have you come on maybe earlier, or we can have you come on later, and we can go over that. Because I think that would just be a real fascinating thing. What do you think?
See if we can get any results. Yes.
Yeah.
So basically the process of initiation is the process of, vibrating at a higher and higher frequency, so that when you die, when you leave your body, you go into a more spiritual body rather than you go into one that is connected with these. Because, alright, so here's the thing. The lower chakras, they're connected with the physical. So the further up you go towards your, once you get past the heart chakra, and you die those ways, you're vibrating at a higher frequency. So you evolve into a higher dimension.
Fascinating.
Which is a higher initiation. You still have a physical body, but you're vibrating higher, and therefore you become a target for, for those powers that be who go after these things. So it becomes harder and harder to go further and further up. You see, because it's like you're walking into a pool of piranhas. It's not nice.
Well, and I also think sometimes when you come in, you have to kind of go through all of your scale before you get to where you left off from the last time. So you have to run through them all again. It's kind of
well, yes,
like
that's right.
You have to start from the beginning and you go, and then, if you get real lucky, by the time you hit your 30s, early 30s, you've already gotten through everything and you're where you need to be. But normally that doesn't really happen until you get a little bit older than that. But that doesn't say it can't.
Well, it's usually in the 30s that people, according to Rudolf Steiner, right? He recognized certain phases of your life, and there are 7-year phases. Believe it or not. So the first 7 years you're developing your physical body. At the age of 7, you have a fever. You burn off your childhood. It's crazy. and almost to the day, my son had a fever when he was 7 years old. Anyway, exactly. And he was different afterwards. I don't know if mothers notice this, but, there's a change. And, then, from that point onwards, you're developing your emotional body. Okay. So from 7 to 14. From 14 to 21, you're developing your mental body. Okay. 7 years in each cycle.
Right.
From 21 to 28, your Saturn return, you, are developing your personality, your ego expression into the world. And then from 20, this is where it starts getting interesting. 28 to 35 is where you start to integrate your soul. And by the time you hit 35, if you're not integrating your soul, you have what we call a midlife crisis. That's,
I never had one of those, so I guess I'm all right.
Yeah. If you're on the wrong path, you'll have a crisis. If you're on the right path, it'll be just a party. It'll be a celebration of you've actually achieved what you set out to achieve, even though you don't remember being conscious of going out and achieving it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, now that whole thing's got my little head's just a buzzing. It's, off in all different directions, trying to listen to what's being said as well. Mm-hmm. Not only from you, but from them. They love you talking, by the way. We did have a question. I've just posted it in there, if you can see it. You want me to read it out loud?
Is this from Gary?
I don't know if that's Gary.
Elvis Presley, based on his upbringing, Jewish roots, and subsequent tales of magical powers in one shape or another, he apparently had mentioned that he believed he was controlled by another source when he hit the stage.
Well, let me look up Mr. Presley in here as well and see, because he's in here as well. She talks about him a little bit.
Many people on stage take on another personality.
They do. They're totally different on stage than they are anywhere else.
Look at the shy Jimi Hendrix. Little
oh my
shy
gosh.
boy, reticent by, and then out on stage, he, shocks and outrages the world by almost having a sexual encounter with a guitar.
There you go.
Yeah. Rude boy.
All right. You ready?
Wow. Go ahead.
His initiation level is 1.7. I want to read this because this might make sense. The fervor of someone getting closer to the second initiation, as well as the subtle arrogance that sometimes blinds, was necessary to him. Having difficulty mastering his emotional body, he tried to polarize his mental body without real success. Only his music provided him with a semblance of comfort. He did not evolve much in the present incarnation because he had to work to broaden the consciousness of the masses by sacrificing part of his evolution. If this had not been the case, he would have diverted too soon from his music and would not have entirely produced the desired effect he had and continues to have. People who have emotional body needs comfort, and change still vibrates because of his music. So his ray structure is, he's a monad of 2, his soul is 4. His personality is a 4 with a sub of 3. His mental is a 6 with a sub of 2. His astral is a 2 with a sub of 6, and his physical is a 7 with a sub of 4.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, certainly, he's got a lot of second ray. Everybody loved Elvis.
Oh my gosh, yes.
The whole love of Elvis. And then there's this fourth ray. Okay, so the fourth ray, most people find anybody who's got any kind of fourth ray, they're usually, either attractive or expressive. Often both.
Right.
Great eyebrows. They have,
right.
Look at Rowan Atkinson. He's got 2-4 energy. And of course, in a female, 2-4 energy is like the mother goddess. Yeah? So in this masculine, form, it's got this awesomeness about him. That was this thing about Elvis, wasn't he? He was awesome.
He was magnetic.
Yeah. So there you go. So, the second ray, yes, absolutely, plenty of it. I would have actually maybe given him a second ray personality as well. But it turns out later that, he, was on a witness protection program. This is what I believe. Anyway, there's a whole thing going out that Elvis actually, faked his death or used the FBI. He joined the FBI to fight the mafia by going underground by faking his death. I mean, wouldn't that be a brilliant film?
That would be a brilliant film. Stranger things have been known to happen, right?
He was at Michael Jackson's wedding and funeral because, of course, that's his father. He'd be father-in-law. How bizarre.
Fascinating, huh?
Fascinating,
yeah.
Indeed. So, yes.
But, he was...
Yeah, go on.
But controlled by another source when he hit the stage.
Well, you talk about that. This is Walk-In City, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It just happens. There's something about it, cause, he used to talk about how nervous he was before he'd go on stage, but he would say as soon as he got out on stage, he doesn't really see anything. He just played his music and danced and sang and did what he did. So, there's always I just think with a lot of these people, that there is that going on, that there is something, whether it be a higher self, another entity, a walk-in, whatever the case may be. I think it's present in many of them. Agree or disagree?
Well, I've just been, cause Gaz just put in, Elvis used to puke before he gigs. Yes, he wrote a letter to President Nixon saying, I want to join the FBI. I want an FBI badge, and, Nixon said, here you go. We'll give you an FBI badge. He said, no, I want to join the FBI. I don't want a badge. I'm not Elvis saying I want a badge. No, I want a FBI badge because I want to be an FBI agent. And he wanted to help. So, yeah, absolutely, there. And, so Gary's saying, cause Gary's actually an Elvis impersonator. So he's got a lot of Elvisology in him.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So,
is there somebody that you would like to take a look at?
So who else? Yeah, so.
You got 109 people. There's probably something on our list in here that's in your repertoire.
Look, Einstein will have raise 3 and raise 5 for sure.
Okay.
And probably not much of a raise 7, you see, because he was your classic kind of abstract, theorist. And is, somebody with raise 7 wouldn't have hair like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, he actually looks like the kind of weird
That's
professor.
A pigeonhole.
Okay.
All right, I'm sorry, Gary. It's, not a pigeonhole, but like, you do Elvis. Let me just say, you do Elvis songs, you do Elvis covers. Yeah. Anyway.
I love it. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Albert Einstein. Monad of 2.
Mm-hmm.
Soul of 1.
Mm-hmm.
Personality 3 with a sub of 2.
Mm-hmm.
Mental 4 with a sub of 5.
Mm-hmm.
An astral 6 with a sub of 2, and a physical 3 with a sub of 7.
Right. Okay. So that shows somebody who is in the process. These 3s to 7s, this is, by now, most of humanity would have gone through this process. We're going from the Ray 3 physical body to the Ray 7 physical body in general. We're going from the Ray 6 astral body to the Ray 2 astral body. We're going from the Ray 5 mental body to the Ray 3 mental body. I can talk about this stuff now because people start to understand what I'm actually talking about. Especially, with this conversation.
I love it.
So, this is the transformation of humanity, expressed in this energetic manner. And it's about the decrystallization, the deconcretization of how our spirit has been imprisoned, really. Because our spirit's been imprisoned in a concrete mind, in a mindset. And so we're in a place where that mindset is now being, like earthquakes, crack the ground. They put little cracks in it, and eventually it becomes, liquefied. And it gives us the chance to recreate our mental body in a stuff that has a much finer grain. So instead of building it with rocks, we can build it with, some sort of foam that, just inflates and, lasts 1,000 years. It's like a differing in density of technologies, of ideas. Is that making sense?
Well, yes, it does. And that brings me to what you and I spoke about earlier today, which is the evolution on this planet right now. You were talking about that earlier, if you remember.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about. This is all why we're here. And like I was saying, as an initiate, people gather around you because they see the light on you and they're drawn to it. And as Audrey says, they're drawn to it like a moth to a flame, and it doesn't know that it's not the sun. It doesn't know it's a candle. It doesn't know it's an LED. It's a flame. It's a light. It goes towards the light. That's all. So, and so you draw towards you everything. And that's why people sometimes feel under attack, because you don't realize that your light is drawing things towards you and you're not being discerning and discriminating as to who you allow in your field.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, if we do this on a personal basis, we can do this on a countrywide basis, and we don't need borders or it's a proper border control, without being, crazy about it. Just normal.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to get back to Einstein for just a minute.
Meanwhile, back at Albert Einstein.
Yep. So here's what she wrote that I think was really interesting. His monad, which again was 2, according to this information, exerted a certain influence, making him more apt to listen to the quote-unquote invisible that contained, according to him, many answers that were to his questions in that invisible. His soul's influence pushed him all his life to accomplish his task. Einstein was gifted with determination, particularly in terms of numbers and their occult aspect. In the eyes of some people, they often appeared as an obsession. He would become impatient, quick-tempered, and would shove everything around, a bit like Beethoven. Totally absorbed by his passion and driven by Ray 1, nothing could stop him. Take heed to those who would dare try. And I've heard that when he was in his space, you just had to be real careful about being in his space. But I don't know how much you've looked at any of Einstein's pictures. There's been a lot of photography out there with, some candid shots that I had never seen before of him, especially later on in life. And when you look at him, if you're intuitive enough, you can just absolutely see and sense the total activity all around him and within him, that I can't even describe it. Because there's not been anybody that I've looked at quite like him, except for maybe Leonardo da Vinci on some level. But Einstein certainly had drawn into, and we'll call it aura for the lack of a better way of saying it, his auric field was filled with the invisible that was communicating with him. Some of it was what we would call binary code conversations. Mathematical equations, sacred geometry, fractal. there's so many different components to what he was in touch with and communicating with, like, all the time. I don't know how he actually got anything accomplished. I mean, he must have had a really, really good strength of will to be able to cubbyhole the information as he needed it and pull it out and apply it when it was necessary.
I remember reading something about Albert. He said, I don't bother remembering useless facts because it clutters up the mind. You don't have enough space to think. And I kind of live by that. I kind of live by that too. I don't like to concern myself with petty facts because I spent 10 years of my life learning a petty fact, which was a computer language of a computer that would be, at the end of that decade, would literally be obsolete. And that's when I lost faith in technology and advancement and progress of science and all this BS. Because I realized that it was cluttering up my precious brain with this language that nobody would ever know and never use again. And life is full of information like that doesn't create any knowledge whatsoever. And the knowledge, doesn't create any wisdom. You can't distill any wisdom out of that knowledge. And, it's just like, paper. It's data. It's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense? It's like, listen, this is where I lost faith not in humanity, in the work thing, in the whole matrix of it. I just realized, oh, bloody hell, I'm not wasting my time.
Yeah, I know. People ask me questions all the time, and you're just like, I'm sure I remember that from somewhere, but I don't keep that stuff floating around because that's not what's important to me.
Exactly. What's the point?
And
It's useless data.
Stuff. It's just stuff, right? And then there's times when stuff comes out of my mouth and I go, wow, I don't know I even knew that, So it's a good thing I wasn't really thinking about it. It just happens to show up, right? As part of all of this. It's the magic of this. The 7 rays, JP, I remember having a lot of conversations with you about this early on. And you were talking to me about it. And I said, well, you've just got to come on the show and tell everybody about this stuff because this is really cool. And it's a door opening, so to speak, to the unseen world, in a kind of a more, logical way. Because we subscribe numbers to identify different features of our existence. Yes. And so that becomes something that people can understand, they can relate to, they can, fold in on it. And yet it expands them at the same time. It doesn't contain them. It actually expands them in the way that the material is presented through these teachings.
Yeah, you're right. The whole thing about the 7 rays is like it generalizes everything that's specific. So you'll see the action of the octave, and then it'll generalize into, wow, that extends into dimensions and things they call, all sorts of implications of what it means to understand what an octave means.
Right. Exactly.
Which is all about frequency, and frequency makes up the whole world. And also different notes in the different octaves are different relationships of frequency. And it's very fixed and very specific. And geometrics, like the edges of a crystal will always have the same angles. Stuff like that. Exactly.
I love it. It's cool stuff. So, do you want me to pick something else out, or do you want to pick somebody else out?
Who else? I don't know.
All right. Let me see what I got here.
Who jumped out at you when you were reading this book?
The Blavatsky. God, I can't pronounce her name tonight. And I already talked a little bit about Einstein. Did we talk about Tesla?
Yeah, we talked about Einstein and Tesla. And Bill Gates. Okay.
And Bill Gates.
Right on, Bill. We can vaccinate people to death, yes.
All right, here's an interesting one that you don't hear too much about anymore, and that's Jules Verne.
Jules Verne,
right?
Oh, yeah.
Jules Verne.
Jules Verne, yeah.
Okay, let's see
Now,
what he says here.
He was a futurist in the 1800s, wasn't he?
I think so. Let me get to him.
And,
I haven't quite gotten to him yet.
And so he wrote these books about submarines and time machines and stuff like that. And it turns out that there was an occult group who studied all this stuff, and they really did have these kind of machines on the quiet. They didn't, let everybody know about them, but, those days in the 1800s, there were submarines of a kind that existed that swam underwater and did stuff.
So here's a little bit about Jules Verne.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He had the ability to see the future through his dreams and to almost live a double life because he would cheerfully wander throughout the high astral spheres and the lower stratas of the mental plane during his nocturnal trips. What he described in his book narrates the adventures he derived from this nocturnal world that populated his nights. He never took himself seriously, even though he knew that what he described contained a part of the truth. He would distinctly see the details of every object, of every character, and could describe them at will simply by drawing upon his inner world where everything was printed and retained. So he was, now this is from the Master DK's commentary.
Oh.
He was a visionary of his time, almost similar to that of Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh,
and, yeah. He had a monad of 2, a soul of 3, personality 3 sub 7, mental 7 sub 5, astral 6 sub of 4, and physical 3 sub of 6.
All right. So the sub of 4 astral body. I've often seen this. This is people. If you got a 4th ray astral body, you're wandering around the plains at night. And you're lucky to be out of the asylum. If you got a 4th ray mental body, it's like, if you got a 4th ray mental body, people will, you might get away with it as a local shaman or something like that. This is why I live in a cottage. I have a 4th ray mental body. People don't get me, right? But it's alright. So they come and see me out of town. But that, that's so there's a kind of, the 4th ray can do the wanderings, and on the psychic planes in different positions. So anyway, where were we? Jules Verne. So, 2nd ray monad, yes. So what we're looking at is that, many of the people that I read, I will read often their major rays. When I do a proper reading, I'll read the sub-rays as well, if there are any, if I find any. And sub-rays are like the ghost of a past life that hasn't quite finished its business. So it's like in a photograph, if you see somebody moving, there's a kind of slur of vision. So that's what the sub-ray is like. It's like a ghost it's like something you haven't quite dealt with, and it'll mess you up. Because like having a 4th ray anywhere is bound to make everything a party, yes.
So here's the last little bit that Master DK wrote about him. Jules Verne is a pioneer that children should rediscover. He allows imagination, even today, to flourish to the rhythm of the reading of his works. It awakens imagination and gives back wonder to the world, thus creating an inner movement instead of paralyzing it like video games do. Very, very astute. And there's a question for you in the chat room if you want to answer that before we run out of time tonight.
Oh, this is nothing to do with that. Well, is the Schumann frequency to do with the rays? How exactly the Schumann frequency is changing in terms of how things are seen, felt, experienced in relationship, or what, from what we are aware of and where we are being energetically drawn to in terms of inner peace, love, compassion, comprehension, ultimate awareness, and collective forgiveness of all before and after these times, a world peace. Well, it all starts with harmlessness. That's what I say. That's what the Buddha says. Harmlessness and, stop fiddling with non-interference, Let people be who they are, because that's the best you get out of them. You can't get any better than people as they are.
Okay, so again, and that's a good answer to that question, by the way. Thank you for answering that. What's your raise again?
My raise and your raise are 1, 2, 3. 1 monad, soul, second ray soul, third ray personality. Okay. According to my interpretations of this. You see, I might be completely wrong. I might be, these are the rays that I read because of the way I'm connected and the way I think I'm, that it works for me. According to my.
So do you ever get into those sub-rays when you're looking at people?
Oh, sure. Because as I said, the sub-rays are unfinished business, or what is known as karma. And particularly if they've got that 6 there. So, for instance, if you got a sub-ray and a 6, so you got 4 sub-ray and then a 6, astral body, that 4 will maybe eventually merge into the 6, which will then merge into a 2. So you then start off with a 6 with a second ray sub-ray, and then you get a second ray sub-ray with a second ray astral body with a 6th ray sub-ray. You see, and then the 6th ray sub-ray will dwindle away, leaving the nice, pure, clear, translucent second ray emotional body, which is cool in its truly cool. It is unaffected. It is the dude in all situations. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not shockable. It's the way I want to put it is the untriggerable empath. See all, feel all, do now. Just experience.
Without being triggered. Interesting.
Yeah, present.
Yeah.
Present without being triggered. So if we can get to that, that's an initiate. To me, that's what initiation is. And then you can teach people, because you're not going to be triggered by people when they ask you questions that touch on things that, are awkward. You know how it works,
I do. I love it. Yeah, absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. So, all that being said, and we just had this it's been an interesting night. This has been an interesting show, with my first guests, both of them, the editor and the author both being on. It kind of just like opens up doorways, it's like conversations and energy just flows in, and it's like allowed to take a peek at that world of those that are past and present. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to see how, if you go back through her book and you start looking at these people that have been on this planet that have made such an impact, and, if you put them in modern day world and they were still carrying those same numbers associated with where they were. Wow. I mean, it's amazing. And then having you come on and explain it some more and then talk about it in depth like you have. And you did it last night. So, I mean, it's like nothing is, because we hadn't talked until this morning, right? And you were on last night. I didn't hear your show last night, but I'd already had this guest scheduled, a month in advance, right? Of tonight. And you didn't know.
I didn't know that I was doing the show. I do ray reading shows when, when nobody turns up to be a guest. And I think, well, that's it. I'll open up. And so we've opened up to spontaneous reality. Thank you very much for allowing me to open my heart and enjoy you.
Oh my God. And thank you for allowing me to enjoy you and all of you wonderful people out there. Thank you so much for being with me. Until we meet again, where will your life's journey lead you? Many blessings, everyone, and good night.